Since I uploaded the episode, why did our lifespan plunge from 900 years? Many of you have written in with the same question. How are those ages even calculated? And can we actually trust these numbers? Those are fair questions. I prepared this episode to answer them properly. Open your Bible to Genesis 5. You will notice something unusual right away. Every patriarch gets the same treatment. Adam lived 130 years. Then he fathered Seth. Then he lived 800 more years. Then he died at 930. Seth, Enosh, Cainan, Mahalalel, Jared, Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, Noah. Every single one follows the same three-part formula. Age at fatherhood, years remaining, total lifespan. Genesis 11 does the same thing, from Shem all the way to Abraham. Scholars call this a chronogenealogy, not just a family tree, a clock. Every entry is a timestamp. They chain together into one continuous timeline. Add them up correctly, and you can calculate the year of creation and the year of the flood. That is exactly what biblical scholars have done for centuries. But here is where it gets complicated. We do not have one ancient Bible. We have three major textual traditions. The first is the Masoretic Text of the Hebrew Bible. This is what your modern English Bible is translated from. The second is the Greek Septuagint, translated in Alexandria, Egypt, around 250 BC. The third is the Samaritan Pentateuch, preserved by a separate Jewish community in Palestine. These three texts agree on much, but in the patriarchal ages, they diverge significantly. Using the Masoretic Text, creation at 4004 BC, the flood at 2348 BC. Using the Septuagint, creation at 5554 BC, the flood at 3298 BC. That is a difference of over 1,000 years. And the divergence is not random. It is systematic. For 6 of the patriarchs, from Adam through Enoch, the Septuagint adds exactly 100 years to the fathering age, but it reduces the remaining years by exactly 100, so the total lifespan stays the same. Someone did this deliberately. Before we go further, I want to address something directly. In our previous episode on the lifespan collapse, we placed the flood at approximately 4,500 years ago. That figure leaned on the Masoretic Text timeline. As we have just seen, the manuscript evidence is more complex than a single date can account for. As we progress, this series will primarily work from the Septuagint chronology that places the flood around 3298 BC, roughly 5,300 years ago. This is not a contradiction of what came before. It is the natural result of studying the evidence more deeply, and I want to deliver information more precisely and more clearly. The Septuagint timeline resolves the archaeological problems we will examine shortly. It gives the post-flood world enough time to develop, and it is the chronology that the early church widely trusted. We will dedicate a full episode to the Septuagint itself sooner or later. That episode will explain and defend this decision in much greater detail. For now, carry this with you as we continue. Now I need to address something you may have already noticed. I just said the Septuagint adds 100 years to the fathering age but subtracts 100 from the remaining years, so the total lifespan stays the same. Then how does the Septuagint produce a creation date 1,550 years earlier than the Masoretic Text? That is a fair question. Let me explain it clearly. The 100-year swap only applies to Genesis 5, the antediluvian patriarchs, Adam through Noah. In Genesis 5, yes, the totals are identical. The years move from one column to another. The Septuagint is not adding years to anyone's life. It is only shifting when they have children. And that matters enormously for the timeline. Because you push the fathering age forward each year, you add one more year to the chain before the next generation begins. Think of it like a relay race. If each runner starts 100 meters further back than before, the total distance of the race grows by 100 meters per runner, even if each runner covers the same ground. 6 patriarchs, each fathering 100 years later. That adds 600 years to the pre-flood timeline alone. But Genesis 11 is where the real gap opens up. In Genesis 11, the The post-flood patriarchs from Shem to Abraham. The Septuagint again adds 100 years to the fathering ages. But this time, it does not subtract those years from the remaining lifespan. The totals genuinely increase. That adds roughly another 650 years. Then the Septuagint includes an entirely extra patriarch, Cainan II, between Arphaxad and Shelah. One complete additional generation. Another 130 years. Added up, 600 years from Genesis, 5 fathering shifts. 650 years from Genesis, 11 genuine expansions. 130 years from the extra Cainan generation. That is where the 1,550-year gap comes from. It is not a contradiction. It is 3 separate mechanisms working across 2 different chapters. Who changed the numbers? And why? Scholars have proposed 3 main explanations. Theory 1. The Septuagint was inflated. The Septuagint was translated in Alexandria. At the time, an Egyptian priest named Manetho had published a king list placing Egyptian civilization far older than anything in the Bible. This was a problem for Jewish scholars in Alexandria. Some argue that the translators stretched the biblical timeline. They added 100 years to each patriarch so that creation and the flood would appear ancient enough to be credible alongside Egyptian history. Even Augustine raised this concern in the 5th century. Theory 2. The Hebrew text was shortened. This theory runs in the opposite direction. It argues that the Septuagint preserves the original numbers, and that the shorter Masoretic text was produced later, deliberately, by Jewish rabbis in the 2nd century AD. After Rome destroyed Jerusalem in AD 70, Jewish scholars regrouped. A rabbi named Yos ben Halafta wrote a chronological text called the Seder Olam Rabbah. Under the longer Septuagint timeline, Jesus of Nazareth was born approximately 5,500 years after creation. Jewish messianic writings expected the Messiah in the 6th millennium. Jesus fit that window exactly. Proponents argue that rabbinic editors reduced the patriarchal ages by 100 years each. That removed roughly 1,300 years from the timeline. It placed Jesus far too early to qualify. Critics push back hard. The Jewish diaspora stretched from Spain to Persia, modifying every Torah scroll across 3 continents, in absolute secrecy, without leaving a single record of resistance. They say that would have been logistically impossible. Theory 3. Accumulated scribal error. Ancient scribes did not write numbers the way we do. They used tally marks and pictographic symbols. A single spiral could represent 100. 1 smudged mark, 1 tired eye, 1 flaked piece of leather, and 187 becomes 87. Of the 17 numerical differences in Genesis 5 between the 2 texts, nearly all can be explained by a single misread symbol representing 100. This is not a conspiracy. It is the natural result of copying fragile texts by hand across centuries. A related question: are these genealogies complete? Could generations be missing? In 1890, Princeton professor William Henry Green argued in the affirmative. He showed that other biblical genealogies deliberately skip generations. The Gospel of Matthew does it. Green argued the Genesis lists were selective, not precise timelines. His view dominated evangelical scholarship for over a century. But scholar Jeremy Sexton has strongly pushed back. He analyzed the Hebrew formula closely. When A had lived X years, he fathered B. Sexton showed that this locks the exact year of B's birth to A's life. Even if a name was skipped, even if B was actually a great-grandchild, the number still tells you exactly how many years passed. James Jordan put it, "There may be gaps in the genealogy. There are no gaps in the chronology. The clock keeps ticking, regardless of whose name appears." Many of you raised this in the comments on our previous episode, and it is a fair challenge. Could the patriarchal ages be recorded in lunar months rather than solar years? Divide 969 by 12, and Methuselah lives 80 years. That sounds entirely reasonable. The theory is attractive, but it collapses under one simple test. Apply the same conversion consistently to the fathering ages. Enoch fathered Methuselah at 65. Divide 65 by 12. That gives you 5.4 solar years. A 5-year-old father. Arpachshad fathered Sulla at 35. Divide by 12. That is 2.9 solar years. Nahor fathered Terah at 29. Divide by 12. That is 2.4 solar years. The theory does not produce unusual lifespans. It produces toddler fathers. If you apply the lunar month conversion consistently, as you must for the theory to work, the entire genealogical system becomes biologically impossible. The lunar month theory does not solve the problem. It creates a worse one. A second objection appears frequently in the comments. How could people living before writing, before civilization, before any organized society, have tracked years at all? It is a reasonable question, and it deserves a serious answer. The absence of a written calendar does not mean the absence of time awareness. Every ancient human culture on Earth, without exception, tracked time through the sky. The sun rises and sets. That is one day. The moon completes its cycle in approximately 29.5 days. 12 cycles make a year. Every agricultural community in human history understood this without needing to write it down. The Mesopotamians, the civilization closest geographically and culturally to the biblical patriarchs, had a highly sophisticated calendar system operating by at least 3000 BC. Second, the biblical text itself assumes year counting as a natural activity. Genesis 7 verse 11 specifies that the flood began on the 17th day of the second month of Noah's 600th year. That is not vague. That is a precise calendrical reference. Third, remember what the genealogies actually record. They record community knowledge, oral tradition, the kind of generational memory that every pre-literate society preserved with extraordinary precision. In fact, oral cultures are often more precise about chronology than literate ones, because when writing does not exist, accurate memory is survival. Now, here is what scholars have actually found about the numbers themselves. The Sumerian king list is a Mesopotamian document recording kings before and after a great flood. The kings before the flood reigned for tens of thousands of years. After the flood, the numbers drop sharply. Sound familiar? The Sumerians used base 60 mathematics to construct those numbers. They were not random. They projected cosmic authority and divine power. Scholar Carol Hill found something similar in Genesis 5. Every age ends in only 5 digits, 0, 5, 7, 2, or 9. Not one ends in 1, 3, 4, 6, or 8. The probability of this happening by chance is less than 1 in a billion. These numbers were constructed deliberately. They encode a hybrid system of Mesopotamian mathematical conventions and the Hebrew sacred number 7. They carry theological meaning. They mark epochs. They embed covenantal order into the timeline. Does that mean they are not historical? Not necessarily. Scribes could embed theological weight into real chronological data. The two are not mutually exclusive, but it does mean we should not read these numbers like a spreadsheet. The third objection goes deeper than chronology. Some of you have written to say the flood itself is fiction, a myth borrowed from a Mesopotamian legend, a story, not history. I want to engage honestly with that. You are right that flood narratives exist independently across dozens of ancient cultures. The Sumerian Epic of Gilgamesh, the Akkadian Atrahasis, the Hindu Manu tradition, ancient Chinese flood accounts, indigenous traditions from the Americas. Critical scholars argue this proves the flood is a shared mythological motif, a story humans tell, not an event that happened. But here is the other way to read the same evidence. If a catastrophic flood actually occurred in human prehistory, you would expect exactly what we find. Multiple independent cultural memories of the same event, each filtered through the language and theology of a different people. The fact that so many unrelated cultures preserved a flood memory, including details such as a single family surviving on a vessel, animals being preserved, and a bird sent out to find land, is not evidence against a historical event. It may be evidence for one. What the biblical account uniquely contributes is this. It is not a story about gods fighting each other, with humanity as collateral damage. It is a story about moral accountability, divine patience, covenant faithfulness, and a new beginning. The theological interpretation is distinct even where the historical memory is shared. Whether you approach it as history, as theology, or as both, the account deserves to be taken seriously on its own terms before it is dismissed. We will not resolve that debate today. I didn't want to leave your question unanswered. There is one more piece of the puzzle. If the Masoretic Text is right, the flood occurred around 2348 BC. The Great Pyramid of Khufu was completed around 2560 BC. That is more than 200 years before the flood. Under that timeline, the pyramid was built before the flood, submerged under a global ocean, survived with no water damage, and was immediately reoccupied by Egyptian dynasties whose records contain no mention of any catastrophe. That is a serious problem. The Septuagint places the flood around 3298 BC, nearly 1,000 years earlier. That pushes the flood before the rise of dynastic Egypt, before the pyramids, into a period where the archaeological record is far less clear. It also gives the 8 ark survivors over 1,000 years before Abraham's time to repopulate the earth. Under the Masoretic Text, they have only 358 years. This is why a growing number of creation researchers are taking the Septuagint chronology seriously. So, how are the ages in Genesis calculated? By adding up the fathering ages in a continuous chain from Adam to Abraham. Which text you use determines the answer. The Masoretic Text gives a shorter timeline. Most English Bibles use this. The Septuagint gives a longer timeline. The early church widely used this. Both texts were considered sacred. Both served faithful communities for centuries. The debate is not resolved. It may not be resolved this side of eternity. But understanding the question is itself an act of faith. It means taking the text seriously enough to ask hard questions about it. To those of you who pushed back in the comments on our previous episode, thank you. Your questions made this episode better. If you have not yet watched our episode on why human lifespans collapsed after the flood, please click the end screen now, or go directly to that episode. There is much more to this story.